Hi guys, welcome to a beginner's guide for Conquest player versus player in Guild Wars 2. This short video will be covering a series of questions most new players have in regards to the game mode. This includes things like numbers, disadvantages and advantages, decision making, objectives, downstates and stomping, and a general breakdown of Conquest itself. Hopefully I haven't put you off already. Let's start by breaking down Conquest. Conquest is a 3-node game with 2 teams consisting of 5 players. Every 2 seconds that you hold a node, you gain a point. Sometimes there are external influences on the map, such as a beast that gives you 25 points, or a buff that will give your team all of the points on the map simultaneously. In simple terms, there's a blue team, a red team, and you kill each other. Over 3 points that mean the world to you. Now open your ears, open your eyes, and get ready for a fuck ton of information. Let's start with numbers, advantages and disadvantages. This set of examples has a Spellbreaker Warrior versus Bunker Druid, featuring a Power Shatter Mesmer that comes in to help the warrior. The Mesmer joins the 1v1, creates a numbers advantage, aka turning it into a 2v1, and forces the Druid away from the point. The other alternatives to what could happen in this instance are shown in the next set of examples. This second example of the same clip consists of the Druid kiting 2 players, wasting their time. Meanwhile, the enemy team gains a number disadvantage, and this means that the Druid is doing a good job keeping 2 people busy. You don't need to be a Druid to do this, but you should be running a bunker spec to increase your survivability. Let's see how it plays out. As you can see, he's running underneath, he's kiting over the wooden steps, and he's just ultimately wasting their time. This is a really good idea. This doesn't need to be done on just this point. It can be done anywhere on any example of terrain where you can abuse that. You just have to keep running and keep yourself alive. In this example, the Mesmer creates the number advantage, kills the enemy, and then immediately disengages to create other pressure on the map. This is a good example of not wasting time and being as efficient as possible. The longer you stay here in a +1 scenario, the longer your team are at a disadvantage. Try to make this happen as quickly as you can, and some builds aren't really meant to do quick burst damage, so always be aware of the time that you've invested in this. As you can see, the Mesmer gets the kill, and then he leaves. His next port of call is probably the midpoint so that he can either get a cap or a decap, depending on what the scenario requires. This is a very good example of a +1 rotation. This next clip is the final example of creating a +1 into a 1 versus 1. This is something which is more commonly done in high sustained dueling. The Mesmer has moved in to force the enemy off of the point in order for his teammate to capture it. Once the point has been captured, the Mesmer leaves with his job done. As you'll see, the warrior is staying on the point in order to get that cap. And now he should leave, which he is. Now let's look at this in a team fight scenario. How would this play out if you, as a roaming damage dealer, would create a numbers advantage in a team fight? Here you can see a 2 versus 2 team fight. The Elementalist comes into the 2v2, creating enough pressure to cause the enemy team to disengage. The reason they disengage is that they don't want to die and force their team into a 5v3 situation for 15 seconds whilst they're respawning. They may return once the numbers are once again even. This is the safest option. In the same scenario, featuring a Thief instead of an Elementalist this time, the red team does not disengage from the fight. They both die around the point and give the blue team 10 points from their deaths, as well as enabling the blue team to rotate, gain advantages, and have more pressure on the map. Sometimes this cannot be helped, but your survivability is key in most cases. Give your best effort not to die. For additional gains on the blue team, the Thief could have immediately left after downstating the Guardian. This fight went from a 3v2 to a 3v1, implying that the Thief is wasting their time. This was unnecessary. They overstayed. On to the next category. Decision making. First off, we're going to take a look at particular choices out of spawn. In this instance, the red team decide to send their Spellbreaker Jeweler to the far point, a Thief to the close point, and the other 3 to mid. This is known as a 1-3-1 split. The purpose of this is to either win far or keep it neutral, and to overall gain map pressure. However, this does have a weakness. If the player on far does not win the duel, or is picked off, and the midpoint is won by the enemy team, then this 1-3-1 split will fail. To make this work, this requires a confident player on the far point, with a support in the middle to sustain the numbers disadvantage. If they don't have the sustainability, then they will die for sure. All they need to do is wait for the Thief to cap close and then come and make it an even numbers game. Unfortunately, the inevitable happens and one of the red team members goes down. This is because there was not enough sustainability to help the fight. This shows the exact same thing happening from the blue team's perspective. It displays a 1-4 strategy where one player takes close and the other 4 push into the middle. The idea is to win the middle team fight or whichever point they wish to 4-man rush and then snowball off of that. This is the most typical choice for most games without a bunker option. As you can see, the Mesmer makes a play to burn some cooldowns from the red team before they approach. This can be a very good opening play to surprise your opponents if you're confident. As this fight plays out, you'll see that the red team have much more sustainability in terms of resurrection traits. This enables their survivability for much longer, but ultimately they do still die. This is a hypothetical situation that you'll see present itself quite regularly within games. Essentially, what's happened is the blue team have lost their midpoint. They haven't gained a single thing since the game started. What this is trying to replicate is players on respawn that are running to their inevitable deaths. Instead of regrouping, the team decides to run into the fight one by one. This means that the red team can kill each player before another player can support them, enforcing a numbers advantage. A better option here would be to leave this point and pull the enemy team to other nodes on the map. This is what we're about to witness the Mesmer doing. He immediately disengages after engaging on the team fight, realizing that it's the worst thing he could be doing. He makes a break for mid, and then he tries to outplay the thief. Just from his actions alone, he makes it so that that thief is not invested in that team fight that was happening on his home node. If everybody on the blue team pushed far out of the base, red would be forced to leave the point and spread themselves out. In turn, this relieves a ton of pressure from the blue team and prevents anything further snowballing. Here we have another hypothetical scenario. There is a 1v1 happening on red close, and the red thief has just respawned. He doesn't know what to do. He chooses the wrong option and instead decides to rotate mid without looking at the minimap. There are 3 enemy team members waiting in the middle point for him, and he dies without achieving anything. This is an example of a poor decision, and the obvious choice was to create the 2v1 on the close point. Unfortunately, this is one of the biggest problems in lower rating games. You must make quick informed decisions based on your minimap, and use that information to your advantage. This example shows multiple different things happening on the map. There's a 1v1 on blue close, a 4v3 in midpoint, and an open available node. The Mesmer is trying to weigh up the options here. He's trying to decide the best immediate course of action. He could create a 2v1 advantage on the bunker, rebalance the mid-fight into a 4v4, and perhaps win, or ensure that the red team do not gain any points by neutralizing their close node. The Mesmer opts for the decap before rotating mid to back up his team. Those 5 seconds invested on that neutral mean that no team will be capping any points whilst they fight. Arguably, this is the best decision. This example shows one team winning a team fight in the mid at the beginning of the game. Now, seeing this kind of destruction is actually quite infrequent. As you climb, you'll most likely see that when people know a teamfight has been lost, they will disengage. They'll go and protect a node, or they'll be offensive to another. However, here you can see that they finish all of the bodies off and they make sure that all of them are on respawn. Now you can see that 2 members from the red team are pushing into the far and overcommitting. They're very cocky, and they think they're unstoppable simply because they just won the last teamfight in such a way. But they're going to be outnumbered. Those people that they just killed, they're now respawning and they want revenge. So they are going to go straight to that close point and they're going to kill those 2 people that are left outnumbered. As a result, they die, and in turn the enemy team are able to run back into the middle point. This time, they have a numbers advantage. In PvP, this is commonly referred to as a throw. I'm sure you've heard that terminology before. This is the final example in this section of decision making. This is quite a forest-focused example of decision making, but the logic still applies to most maps. You can see that the Mesmer has capped their close point. He's then thought he's seen an opportunity to do the beast. Whilst doing the beast, the thief comes in, neutralizes the point, and then sees that he is doing the beast. The thief is about to steal the beast from the Mesmer, and he's going to take those points with him. Beasts are very rarely worth it, so always check your minimap. To anybody that hasn't died themselves from boredom of watching this video, congratulations. You're about to learn what to do with a downstate person in PvP. This is the last subject I'm going to cover in this video, but it's an important subject and it's worthy of its own subject heading. Here you can see the Mesmer and Engineer having a 1v1 on the node. The thief comes in, creates a 2v1, and kills the Mesmer. It takes a little while, but they get there. The Mesmer is then left to bleed out without any options or anybody coming to rescue them. Both red team members disengage, and the engineer starts looking down the other channels to see if anybody's going to come looking towards his point. Shortly after this, the Mesmer decides that it's about time that he starts resurrecting himself, thinking he's got lucky, maybe he's been left alone. Little does the Mesmer know, the engineer still has the Mesmer targeted, and he's seen what this Mesmer's trying to do. Ultimately, the Mesmer wastes their time, and the engineer prevents the res. Here, we're going to witness the same thing, however, this will happen to a ranger. This ranger is playing druid, by the way. He's been +1'd, thief, and warrior, chasing him, and they're about to kill him off point. You're about to witness an incorrect method of leaving somebody to bleed out. The reason why is pretty simple. Rangers have an ability in Downstate to have their pet res them, much like a player would. If a ranger is left alone for long enough, they will resurrect themselves. It's the best decision, almost always, to just stomp one out. Anybody with any self-res potential, they should be stomped. It eliminates cases like this happening. The ranger is then able to jump straight back on the node and contest the warrior, and it's a pain in the ass. Seeing as this is the final thing that's going to happen in this video, I wanted to go out with a bang. We're about to witness a 5v5, and the blue team have 3 necros. The red team basically don't know what's happened to them, they're all dead, and this was meant to cover what's going to happen in a typical team fight and what you should do. Ultimately, it's common sense. You want to eliminate those targets from the team fight as quickly as possible. And you can see that they're all just calling a target, focusing on that one target, eliminating it, and then moving on to the next one. Don't panic, that's not what all team fights are going to look like, that's what 3 necros looks like. Very spoopy. Shout out to everybody that helped me today, helped me to make the video happen. Thank you so much. I couldn't have done it without you. I had a lot of support from the Platinum and Legendary community in deciding what went into this video, and I just couldn't have done it without you. I really hope that this video fulfills what people want it to be. And if this has interested you, well, subscribe or find me on Twitch. Check out my other AT videos. I'm sure this is the first of many, but even I know my editing skills are shite.